for planning between the two of you and I. Well, she's ex officio.
Fine.
Nothing for nothing.
What?
Just say two of the three.
Okay.
That works. Are we in?
Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started with our first budget hearing of the evening, science and technology. Going over that information systems, so we'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. So I'm present, I'm the chair of the Science and Technology Committee. And then I have with me, Councilmember Gully and Councilmember Soriento. And we're also accompanied by Councilmember Men and Councilmember Steele. So I'll hand it over to Andy and Chris, our comptroller and deputy mayor, to walk through the budget.
Good evening. We'll start on page 72. Which is salaries for BIS. The only, well, salaries like we noted last week, the changes in salaries are contractual. One item to know, the salary savings of $31,878 is the deferred hiring date of the data communications analyst until July 1st, 2024. Go back to page 70. Dues and subscriptions are the cost of the annual fees for the various softwares across most city departments. I would say, for the exception of the police department, we assumed a 3% increase year over year, that appropriation line. And then just to note, consultant services is primarily for costs related to the city's agreement with Capital Region BOCES, but also some consideration for if the city needed to bring in an outside firm for IT support as needed. Generally speaking, this is the risk of being redundant status quo budget without much change, with the exception of 180 accounts for the reasons we talked about last year.
Andy, the $3,000 overtime, is that included with the comp buyouts?
Yes,
Okay. Because I see that it got comp buyouts got zeroed out, it's 3,000. And then from last year, there was overtime of 500 and comp buyout of 2,500. So that all got grouped into.
right.
Okay. Thanks for the- Yeah. And Andy, I know we went over this earlier today, but the 32,000 for the office materials.
That would be to purchase new computers on an as needed basis.
Sure.
And then the office equipment, that's the new copy. The office equipment is the new copiers.
Jim?
I was just gonna ask about the office equipment copiers. So we're done with that.
The purchase, yes, we have the ongoing maintenance agreement, which is in 1345, the purchasing department.
Thanks. Yeah. So, Chris, probably a question for you, and I know that the last few months, there's probably nothing in mind, but what direction are we taking our science and technology department? What new focus? I mean, I know that we lost one of the crucial members of our team. Where do we go from here, and how do we make it? I've heard a lot of things like incompatible systems or certain systems don't communicate. What do you feel is the direction the city should go in this department?
Well, I think first is to hire the new computer network manager. And we are in conversations with personnel about ways that we can get the word out more. We have received a few candidates, but they're not really up to spec for the type of position that this is. I think as far as priorities moving into the new year, and that's one of the reasons why we deferred the one position 6 months, bring in the computer network manager. And then allow them to pick the person that's gonna be involved in the decision-making process, filling that additional position. And I hope that there's a couple primary areas, but first and foremost is to assist with the rollout of Chronos and also to assist and look at our finance system, which I know is something that Andy really wants to upgrade. That's going to be a very labor-intensive project. Our past computer network manager did a lot around cybersecurity and this, the securing our network. We also, I'll just say, did bring in Gray Castle this year, so an external firm to do a security analysis of our system, and the results were very good, actually. So we're happy to see that, and make sure that we're protected moving forward. But I think those two are two of the primary areas. Chronos, looking at the finance system, and then I also think assisting TPD with the additional rollout of the cameras as needed in the city.
Right, thanks, I appreciate that. Time clock, like 2024 coming up, right, Andy?
And,
Huh?
and,
I think maybe middle of it, you're always asking. I hope we can, I mean, I know it's been a little tough, I worry about also the technology changes all the time. But you say we're set up in the future also to protect us from any harm or any, what do they call it? What do they call
There's like
it? Wormware or
malware and
malware or whatever. I mean, you feel that this company that we're using, is gonna be able to guard us, because these people are savvy.
Well, we have a number of services that we utilize to protect our systems. What they did was actually try to break into our system essentially to see if it was secure enough. And we found that it was. There were a few minor changes that we needed to make, but that worked out well. I will say that is a key component of the computer network manager as we bring them on. And I'm hoping with some renewed recruitment, and all of the hoopla that comes with the new mayor. I think that helps us as well too.
Let's hope, huh? Thank you, appreciate it.
And I shared this with Andy earlier, but there are a number of resources that the New York State Comptroller's Office has around IT systems, malware, a number of other things that I can send along to you guys. One of which had like a checklist for doing audits for making sure your system's safe, and then another audit for the technology that we have. So, they recommend doing that annually. I don't think we've been able to do that, but just kind of doing an overall tech audit to see where are we, are there any, like, for example, I know these iPads are pretty fine, but I don't know if other departments have older iPads or tablets that might need to be replaced, might become obsolete within the next few years. At some point they stop updating them.
Yeah, if you can pass those over to me, I'd be happy to look at it.
Sharon? So, I mean, one of the issues that came up obviously was like the phone systems for DPW. And I don't know if that would fall under their budget or under IT. But, that seems like it's the security component, the ability to do jobs more efficiently with the staff burnout. And either within the DPW budget or within this department's budget, is there enough money to provide, those basics, office basics?
Yes, so in the case of the DPW garage, they do have a phone. We're working through exactly, I don't know the exact issue that she was referring to. But we can resolve that. We also do have, thanks to council, the funding for upgrades at DPW. So if we need to dip into that funding to do technology upgrades, I can talk to Andrew to see if it's allowable, and that it would be, but we could see about, he just said yes, we could look at that as well.
Yeah. And maybe, like, if that's something that has to stay either within the W budget or the IT budget, getting that appropriate line. So that, you know, and even basic stuff like, you know, do they have security? They have some way so that, you know, the technology aspects of staying secure and being able to transfer calls to other departments is pretty 1980s stuff. Like, we should.
Yeah, that was my understanding was the transferring of calls was not able, was not, the phone didn't have the capability of that. We should make sure all our phones have that. Like, step that. Tech audit, Councilmember Sorrento.
Also, to add on that, really look into getting a panic button installed over there.
Yeah,
Especially if the public does come in. And there's not really any type of barriers that could protect the employee. I really, it's really important to have at least a panic button also placed.
so barriers have already been installed.
Yeah.
Based on the feedback, and additionally, I think a door locking mechanism is also being worked on right now, if it's not already installed. But I'll check with Chuck.
Now, do you have anyone that comes in well, I mean, we're self-funded, but at least like a third-party administrator for liability insurance at least, or even workers comp come in and do an evaluation with anyone for each building location?
Talk about like risk assessment
Yeah.
and insurance, so we're,
Yeah.
well, we're not. We have we have traditional insurance liability. They do walkthroughs of the different buildings for risk assessments annually, something that personnel does with each party.
Yeah,
That is something that we do.
okay. So has there been mention on like any type of panic button? Because I know, so when I do my workplace violence evaluation, I do it at the same time as our insurance representative comes in and does a risk assessment. And I also call the union, and you have to, for each location, you have to include the part of the policy with, Department of Labor's, you have to include the, a union representative also. And so they basically help me out with my workplace violence evaluation while they're doing their risk.
So the bargaining units are always there. We can
Yeah.
walkthroughs, risk assessments. I don't recall ever hearing of a panic button like being brought up at the DPW. So
Okay,
it's
yeah,
not to say that not right or wrong, I just don't
Yeah.
recall ever hearing it before what the comments at that OGS
Yeah.
meeting 2 weeks ago were.
it is part of the workplace violence, evaluation checklist. But yeah, I mean, all insurance carriers are different, but that was one thing that was also mentioned from our risk assessment. That was mentioned. Yours. So, all right, thank you.
Chair.
Yep.
Since we got off the subject, so
Yeah.
talking about insurance here. I have a question. I was talking with Councilmember Sorrento earlier, and she said that they did an assessment for something, you know, your workers' comp, and you got funding
Yep.
back towards. Could you explain that to me? Do we get it out of our carrier? She might.
Yeah.
We're self-insured for workers' comp.
I understand.
Yeah, so. We're not. Over there, yeah, we got a workplace, safety award. Like about over 14,000 a few months ago, and we just got a check for a loyalty award for like $4,100. From our workers' comp insurance carrier. So, pretty cool, and then you can spend it on anything.
Just hope.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this earlier, but I just wanted to bring this back up. C-Click Fix, I'm not sure if we still use that. I'm not sure. Chris, do you have any insight on that in terms of helping? Essentially, I'm thinking of ways that we can help our staff, particularly our clerks, document issues that come up and tracking where they're at within departments, and just having a record of that, and I'm pretty sure we use that for like things like potholes. And the LED lights, but it could be really helpful reporting street lights, traffic lights that go out, things like that.
Yeah, I can take a look into that.
Great. And I just can't emphasize enough how much of a great resource it can be if we are able to have staff trained on it, using it, tracking things, instead of having to rely on paper and calendars, we can rely on technology. So I'm just checking my notes, see if there's anything else that I have in here in terms of other priorities. And I know there's a struggle with finding a software that works. But it sounds like we can kind of set up the parameters to set up the next administration to get that all started. I think that could be really helpful, even just doing like an audit in terms of what the programs that we use and when the usability of those.
Yeah, and I think, it's a game changer when we can get over the finish line with the finance system. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sharon? I know one of the things with our new owning the poles and owning our own streetlights, it does give us the opportunity to do municipal broadband. And basically, internet that's available to people who can't afford it. And that now that we have that asset with physical assets, but also technology piece, has there been any conversations around bringing municipal Wi-Fi to Troy?
We haven't had any conversations. We're still working on basically fixing some of the remaining lights.
Yeah.
But that would be a great piece to talk about, actually. I knew that was a possibility. I didn't realize it. I don't think we purchased it with this system. But maybe it's an add-on that we can look at. That's a really good idea.
And I know it also allows us to put, it allows us to put security cameras that in, now that we own the pole, if we need cameras in a certain neighborhood, there's a developing on. And if in this budget, we can include enough money to be able to purchase some of those. Or maybe that's something that's more appropriate for, the public safety, police budget. And there's certain good at finding grants, they write grants. And so maybe that's something that we can ask the chief to look at, because even being able to, when all of us are getting developing problems, having that flow of information back to the department, that may be able to stop things before they become major problems.
Yeah, and I think they are definitely looking at, that's a good question for the police department. They're definitely looking at expansions, into the future for the camper program.
Chair. Just for the record, I don't think we own. We only own the small one. We own the lights on the pole. I believe, am I right?
We own the lights on the pole. In some cases, when the only utility on the pole is our light, we own the pole as well. So think of the pedestal lights, the ones in Howard
Yeah.
Park.
Right,
In that case, we own that pole.
right. But
Plus
the smaller one that run the wires and everything on.
If National
And
Grid,
National Grid, they own those.
they own those
We
poles.
own, right.
Correct.
So those are the smaller ones, which can be neat. But I was also told by the ex-deputy mayor that there was a component to put that camera on top of the light and not attach to the pole, which would allow us to utilize that in the future. That was
Okay,
a long time ago.
yeah, we can look into that.
Yeah.
I know in some cases, the quality of the video with some of those cameras isn't, because we did look at those last year in some cases, and it wasn't good enough. to be usable by law enforcement.
If you don't go all the way and get great cameras, it's just a useless waste of money to just appease a few people who say, oh, now we got cameras. Because if you're not gonna get the quality, you're not gonna get the pictures. You spend a lot of money without a lot of results. Let's do it right.
Yeah, I think maybe even like phasing out the projects might be a good idea, so we can and be like, oh, does this work well? Before we implement it across the whole city, and kind of catch some of those, project management issues and all of that. Yeah, I think just like kind of one other thing, that's kind of coming to mind in terms of IT and security is just like figuring out what kind of policies and procedures we have in terms of like, usage of, phones, laptops, computers, how, like, what is the policy around that and security measures around those. And just thinking about, like password management, like make sure folks are trained on that, so we use like passwords that are secure, across the board, and then, for remotes, working, I know we do a lot less of that, but if folks need to sign in on like a remote computer, making sure that we're using kind of top-notch security. I know Cisco has a really good system for connecting across network.
And the lucky thing around that is, and this was happening when I became deputy mayor. Quinn was working on a lot of those because of insurance requirements as well. So I do feel very confident in our two-factor authentication and how that's working, and how we allow individuals to access the network remotely. And I'll say Joe Winarowski in particular is very protective. Who we give access to, how we give access to, et cetera. So, even when we had Gray Castle, at certain points they had access to our network. That was a very controlled manner that we gave it to them.
That's awesome.
But we can take a look at I'll add the policies that you mentioned to the list as well, because that ought to be something that will also want the new computer network manager involved in.
For sure, yeah, there's a good list within the New York State Comptrollers. I'll send over those resources for you, but there's a good list of different policies and procedures that really just strengthen your overall security. Any other questions?
Thank you.
You have a motion to adjourn? Motion. All in favor? Aye. All right. Ben? I got. Hello. I will, call people to the planning committee meeting, John's here. We have 151.
We'll start on 150.
153. Dylan, if there's anything you want to come on, join, we'd love to have. And Councilmember Figueroa absent, Councilmember Soriento is present, Council President Pintello, official members present, and Councilmember Penn, Chair present. Also present, we have Councilmember Gully, Teal, and Connolly Wilson. Mayor Madden, Deputy Mayor Nolan, and Commissioner of Planning and Economic Development. Dylan Turek. And Comptroller. So let's quickly rise and pledge allegiance. And I got this thing called. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go for it.
Maybe call
Oh,
it.
yeah. Call the planning commission or planning committee meeting order. Kind of. What?
Here we go.
Yes,
I'm
I'm so sorry.
Page 154. At the risk of being redundant once again, salary changes that you see on in the planning department are contractual based off of CSC account. We're back in 152. Unless there's questions on personnel. Once again, pretty status quo budget. The increase in dues and subscriptions from $4,500 to $23,000. The increase is for the building block software that's used by multiple departments. The increase from 37,500 to 57,500 consultant services. 37,500 of that is for the CDTA bike share, and the $20,000 increase was for the tree related grant that I believe the city was going to be applying for. It was the local match of the grant. Tree inventory, tree related tree inventory.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm curious, were we able to apply to, I know there was like a federal grant for trees. Were we able to apply for that?
I'm not really sure about the federal grant because we were applying for a grant that was part of the state CFAs. So that's what the budget items is.
Great. I'll send you the link. I don't think it's open right now, but for next year.
Awesome, thank you.
I do have a question about the federal and state grant reporting position, and since we really don't have that position filled, like what strategy? To fill it?
So right now, the strategy is sort of to maintain what we're doing right now. Right now, we don't have the volume of grants that would require really sort of a set position forward. That said, we can open it up and see what comes in. Starting over again in tier one, you know, the salaries. Oh, sorry, thanks. I think there's a discussion to be had about potentially combining meeting works with the different open positions
Mhm.
to something else. But right now, I think we're trying to sort of just get ourselves stable with you guys that we're gonna be going into next year, and we can start to have discussions about tactical, strategic sort of operations. But I'm just now getting to the point where I'm really starting to understand how this all works together and really kind of what's needed. It's gonna take a little bit of time.
Because, you know, from past year's budget, we've eliminated one of the assistant planner positions, is that correct?
We had basically somebody moved into the planner position, so it wasn't exactly,
They moved into the position.
there was no planner position occupied before that. So somebody was basically moved from assistant planner to planner, thank you, correct.
Mhm. Oh, I see. Did any other council members have questions?
No, I'm talking to the contractually.
Yeah.
And, I do have a question, Chair.
Councilmember Dolan?
Dylan. How's the transition been to commissioner? What's your experience and what do you think?
before you jump in on that, I just did want to say, I do think it's important with the federal and state grant coordinator that we position the planning department to apply and to be able to manage the different state grants that we have. The SAM grants, we're looking at our parks programming. So, as we're having conversations with personnel about, how do we engage with the workforce, potential workforce? I view the federal and state grant coordinator as a key component of that, so that we can get the right person into that position that's going to fit well with the team. That's what Dylan was mentioning. As he's getting more of a feel for the team, got to find that right person to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you. How are you doing? How am I?
All right.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate the question. So it's been actually really great. Being part of the team ahead of time and sort of having an opportunity then to sort of continue a relationship where I feel like I'm still sort of very much embedded with my crew. I think they feel very comfortable coming to me with issues. They also feel very comfortable coming to me with ideas. And we have, oh, sorry.
You speak really fast.
I
Now
know.
when it's slow, it's going in.
I'm downstate, I'm sorry.
Talk like a bee.
All right, so,
I'm sorry.
no, you're okay. So, it's been great working with people that I've already worked with. It's been really fantastic, and I think it's an opportunity to, sort of build on a relationship where I think we all saw each other as being part of a team and all kind of starting out at the same level. And then the difference is that one of us is now sort of there, just kind of stand in front and ensure that, we're all accountable, but at the same time, that they're my people, like, they're with them. So it's been really good.
How are the projects? I mean, you got a lot of pieces of the puzzle in front of you.
We got a
How are
lot.
they going along? And the transition, how they go along for you moving forward towards, the goal of finishing?
I don't want to say that, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I think as a group, we've done a really good job of the transition and sort of keeping things going without dropping any balls. And part of what I've tried to do is add a bit of sort of organization, because that's the way I have to be organized, otherwise things get kind of crazy. So I've kind of instilled, I think, a sense that we're going to try to follow things. John brought up before, like the first week, I think that we didn't have, first week I was in this position, that we didn't have the what do you call it, agenda at the time. But ever since then, we've been hitting it. This month is the first time that it's a couple days late, but we've really been hitting that. And we've also gone and cleaned up a lot of stuff. So not only are we carrying forward projects, but we're also trying to basically go back and tidy up some things so that everybody kind of understands where to focus. Like even some of the little things that are kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
We're doing it as we go.
Great. Good to hear. I told these guys when I retire, I'm going up north and BU, take those beautiful pictures of creeks and trees. And
Amen.
away from all this and handouts.
I'm here with you whenever you want.
I can imagine the sanctuary up there, brother. We're gonna take a trip together.
Whenever you want. I'm all about it.
I did have one other question regarding grant coordinator, because, I recognize that the administration of the ARPA grants are taking a tremendous amount of the deputy time, which just comparing salaries, that doesn't seem like good value for our money. And so expediting hiring that person takes a tremendous amount of pressure of whoever the deputy mayor is. And it means that that money, which is designed to flow out on a timeline, and it's a rapidly shortening timeline. I know that the tourism money that's supposed to go to the Caribbean hasn't been released yet. And it's certainly one of those things we're going into the holiday season. That's kind of prime tourist time. So, I think part of leaving this position vacant, even for part of the year, means that we're doing the same type of administrative work for federal grants, federal money, but we're doing it at a much higher cost. So,
It's a good thought to perhaps put some of the ARPA administration into this position. I do want to, on the bid specific item, I met with the executive board and Olivia, they recently just sent me their budget. So the delay on, wasn't, and it's just working through the process, figuring out what they were going to use the money for. It took a lot of time on their end. So we're working with them. I actually just was emailing with Olivia today about it. So, right.
and I mean, if that's, obviously we're working with all these community groups. But also, when you drop stuff into your lap, you have a lot of other irons in the fire. And it's now we're deep enough into ARPA, the money's been allocated, and it's, the clock is ticking for, because it has to be in people's hands and on the ground, and that was the point of the program.
Sure.
Councilmember Soria.
Dylan, is there a reason why, the training line got cut in half? It was 5,000 last year and it, I mean, I'm not
Oh,
complaining,
no, no, it was specifically for a program that we picked up on,
okay,
and for the, we call it the new zoning.
okay. All right, so that's where the fund,
It was just that standoff one time.
yeah, because I was just wondering, because it seemed like there was like a little, change in your department you included and, something that I'm a little surprised of why
I like,
the training line was cut in half, just.
it was never something that we've done, I think, traditionally in the past, and it was
Okay.
there for specific projects, because they had to understand the zoning code and how to apply it. to
Sure.
us, And also the building blocks of the police department too, but, in the future, I think it's something worth looking at, and I definitely, the same as you encouraged me with the APA. Yeah, APA.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd love to encourage everybody in my department to do similar things. It's just a question of figuring out, I think, first, the foundation, where are we? And then I would love to get to that conversation with you about how to basically help people spend time that they actually want to do things that are, both their own
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
Council President.
Councilmember.
I have a question about the, for the federal state grant coordinator. I understand that that's probably a union position. Could you guys think about maybe doing a grant manager instead, kind of combine, since we got rid of the grant coordinator at the mayor's level, combining those for that?
So I'll give it to Chris in a second, because I think it's more his area. What I can say is that you guys are bringing up, it's very hard to sort of delineate what is in my department versus what's with the mayor. So like, we never handled any of the ARPA stuff in our department. So none of that stuff really ran through us, because that was more on their side of the building, I guess. At the same time, though, it's worth raising the question of like, well, why have you decided to go? Like, well, maybe there's enough for, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know exactly how much goes through him, but I understand it's a lot, so. That's to be considered as well, but aid to that and some of our grants office.
Yeah, just thinking in terms of making that salary maybe a bit more competitive and build that.
Yeah, I think that would probably be more, quite frankly, I don't think we have enough grants to warrant a full position, just managing, like, just sort of handling the payments of those grants. At the same time, though, if somebody were doing well, we're like, fine for some of them at the same time. Well, that would certainly provide value.
For sure, or even, like, I know this is in the planning department, but at like the mayor's level, mayor's office level, you could do like a cross, different department.
And, we did have conversations about that previously. What I found when talking with staff is that if their expertise is with the police department or the fire department or DPU, we want the person on the, in that organization to be the one that applies for the funding. And that is something that Dylan and I talked about this position within planning, because there's funding out there for projects. If you think of the DRI, for example, are there other pots of money that planning should be applying for that? They have the know-how as far as what's coming down the pike, and the expertise, and they know all the players within the development game, et cetera. So yeah, it's definitely worth a longer conversation about what that position.
Yeah, for sure, and kind of just based on last week's conversation, there was kind of under the impression that a grant coordinator kind of applies to all the grants, whereas a grant manager would be responsible for following up, making sure we're on time, on schedule, in budget, in scope, and like handling all those kinds of reporting aspects to it that the departments may not have the capacity for. I understand the departments know their budgets and know what they need, but having someone there to help just make sure we're getting across the finish line when we accept a grant, we're following through and actually pushing forward on that. That's kind of my thinking.
Yeah.
Council President.
Hi, all. Couple questions, Dylan, the land bank, how's the relationship going with the land bank? I think, now that the prior executive director has resigned. They've taken like a new staff toward really kind of going back to their mission. And I think it was steered off a bit. If you could fill us in on how that's going.
I don't think I'm the right person to fill you in on that because I haven't been that involved since I left the board. That's 4 or 5 years ago now at this point. Since then, Steve, obviously having experience being, I think he created the Land Bank Association. So he had a lot of familiarity with both the law and how it, so the process of Land Bank. So he was happy to jump on that. With him leaving and now with this sort of bit of a vacancy, I think in terms of people on the board, there's an opportunity to re-engage, but I think we're both at a point right now where that's probably going to come down the path in the new year. Because I think they're trying to figure out right now their own plan, and I don't want to sort of intercede with that until they know what they want to do.
He did seem to really be involved with the land bank, so I wasn't sure if that was just Steve doing it or as planning commission.
Well, he's doing it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
He clearly is.
Okay, so you're not really, got it.
Not yet.
Okay, IDA, LTP, I came in as you were talking, I know that there were some concerns with meeting notices, and one of the things I hear, Dylan, folks in the immediate neighborhood or proposed projects are not getting the appropriate notice. Have you heard that? And
No, I haven't, but that doesn't mean that it's not. Again, like, just because I'm not hearing it doesn't mean that somebody's not hearing or it's not actually happening. So what I think, if it relates to the IDA and to the LDC, there's, a specific place to find out when those meetings are. They're held at the same time every month. They're held in the same place every month. We do get a bunch of people, that are visitors that are specific to certain projects typically, but we don't get a lot of people who come out, early on a Friday to just listen to us sort of talk about projects. At the same time, though, for planning board, that's a little bit different. There's got to be a posting, et cetera.
Yeah.
So if there's, some people might be conflating the two, but that happens a lot. We'll go say, well, what happened with this meeting? Why wasn't this discussed? Well, it's because of the IDA. You're talking about when there's a lot of subtle differences, obviously. So it gets sort of confusing, but I think that's where you're probably curious.
okay, and then my last thing, I have to ask only because the council appropriated $3 million so far, but I know you've spent quite a bit of time with One Monument, and I have to tell you, I was disappointed to have to read in the paper about this kind of new shift with affordable housing, et cetera. What is the exact status, and if you could fill us in?
Sure. So I don't think it's a secret anyway that one is where ran into some serious escalations in terms of cost. As a lot of the material costs kind of skyrocketed after was the result after the COVID, the pandemic. And it really shot up to the point that we were kind of watching things go up on a daily basis. The result of that was that we had to get additional money, and the goalpost kept moving on us. So as we were looking for additional funding, there was also a real push in New York State, I think, to create a housing plan that sort of provided housing for all. And that means more of mixing incomes, that kind of thing. And we have some state money now that I believe we would like to be able to deliver on the governor's promise. We're delivering housing for all if we can. At the same time, there's a certain amount of tax credits that come along with that. And a very small percentage of the units being built for, and it'd be 80% AMI, which quite frankly, I think 75 to 80% of people in Troy qualify for. So it's not like we're talking about, 40% AMI or 60% AMI. We're talking about people who make $80,000 a year. So that qualifies for a certain percentage. At the same time, it'd be like 20 units. And again, all this is still in the working. So we're still trying to figure this out because we have a bit of a hole. And that's really where things are at the moment. We've got enough money where if we were able to do the public side of things, I feel comfortable knowing that there's potentially a contingency, but we don't know if that contingency exists or not because we don't know what strings are attached to the money. So once we have that information, we can say, okay, if something's not working out or that hole's not getting any smaller, we have a plan we could probably go with at some point. We have enough money, or that money goes off the table if this development deals with that exists. So then we have to come up with the rest of the money.
Where are they in terms of process wise in terms of dollars? I know you kind of touched upon it, but I mean, we obviously have the money we set for the public part of it. We don't want to move forward any further until they come forward, I take it, with their private side.
Yeah, the private, this is a partnership, and from the beginning, they've been really instrumental in helping us move forward. Whether that's, helping us work through the difficult ownership situation and kind of figuring out how to spell that all out. They put considerable amount of capital into this project. And we don't feel comfortable saying to them, look, we're just gonna leave you guys here now that we've got this money, which they helped us something pretty secure. So I think we're looking at them saying, look, now that we're here, we want to pull you along with us, figure out a way.
So did the 19 mil come to the city or directly to, Hoboken?
That's not really clear.
So now that certainly raises.
It will obviously, it would come through the city. The hope is that we would, some suspicion or I guess strong inclination is that. it would come to the city.
What do we start to get that?
It would come to the city.
The budget language that New York State passed, the governor signed, offered flexibility for both the public side and private side. And the state knew there was still a budget hole. And that's where, Hoboken's having ongoing conversations with New York State about, are there other pots of money that might be accessible?
Not, check, okay, so now you made me lose my train of thought here. So on that note, so I guess the 19 mil, if it comes through the city, say Hoboken isn't able to come up with their private side, does the 19 mil potentially go toward a project or no? Are all bets off, or we don't know?
We don't have clarity on that. That would be an ongoing conversation with the state.
So when the state gave the money, only because I worked there, did they put it specifically toward the project, Chris? Or the site? I mean, there's a big difference there.
If the money was for this project at Monument Square. So that's where the question would be, if, depending on how much the project changes, is it still going to be an allowed use, basically? We don't have an agreement, for example, it's still just an appropriation. We aren't to the point where we have an agreement with New York State for the funding, so
Oh,
but
so
some of those
we
things are
haven't-
not clear.
Okay, we haven't signed
Correct.
anything to be.
Correct.
I mean, at some point, we definitely have to get direction. I mean, we all are frustrated with the progress at One Monument for many years, not just, I mean, we all wanted to see this move forward, obviously, but, if it appears that it's just not going to happen, but hopefully there's a chance to capture, the 19 mil. I mean, that's, have they approached the IDA? And I did remember my question. Have they approached the IDA yet for any pilots, anything to that nature?
They can't, we need to make sure the project is approved and sort of ready to go before it comes to the IDA. And the LDC owns the project, it owns the site potentially between that, that's for the transfers. So there's a couple sort of mechanisms in there that make it not a pilot, it's more like a lease agreement, lease event. There's some subtleties that are the lawyer things that
Yeah.
are difficult for me to explain, but at the same time, there will be some sort of subsidy on taxes, I assume, if it continues going the way it's going. In terms of difficult.
And do they have an agreement right now with the LTC to lease the land or no?
We're still working on the original sort of agreement that we're trying to come up with a solution that goes before city council for final approval. Needs to have planning approval, needs to have all the approvals in place before setting up the closing, and obviously then going to the IDA or however that works out.
And I would think you wouldn't come to us for an agreement like that until they have their financial package and plan together.
I mean, that's, the reality of the situation is once we have something that's actually used, it's hard to come here and say we have much. We're working on it, but at the same time, a lot of it's outside of our hands.
Andy, didn't we approve something new? Not an agreement, but we did receive money from, the transfer to the LTC, correct? Didn't we?
I think that might have been for the geothermal.
Yeah.
No, I believe, if I recall correctly, well, I know the council approved
Yeah, I was.
LDA and
Yeah,
package document.
right.
If I recall correctly, there was a payment to be made by Hoboken Brownstone, but I believe it, did not come to the city, it went to the LDC and it was restricted at the LDC, to my understanding.
Yeah, I knew that there was something.
So in light of the fact that we were in the process of starting a project and not knowing exactly what it would cost, we understood that there would end up being significant management fees basically for a park. And, you know, the complaint that we kept hearing over and over again was the city needs to maintain its parks. So what we said to them was, look, like in light of the fact that we can't pay us this or that because it's impossible to figure out how it's going to kill the project or not. We said, look, pay us a certain amount of money on the back end towards the maintenance of the park. So we don't have to pay for the maintenance of the park. You guys can take care of it for us. And that's what the money would have been pledged for as it's in the LDA, because that seemed like something that then helps our operating budget. It could potentially help the city. But leave flexibility.
It doesn't sound as promising as, you know.
I would be, my face would look worse in terms of like my emotion if I were really concerned. There's a part of me that just, let's hold on, like, I'm not doing.
No, I'm not, you know, suggesting anyone
I-
walk away, with, you know, an investment.
I still see that, for lack of a better, if Leslie knows, I still see the whole being filled. We're gonna get just.
When was your last conversation with Hoboken? How recent?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So-
I know I asked this last time we talked about One Monument Square, but is there like a budget in terms of how much they need to, like how much needs, what's the gap? How much of it, what it needs to be appropriated toward all of that?
So the budget is a little bit older now, because every time we run this budget, we run it probably a dozen times, it costs a ton of money. Quite frankly, and so we're at the point now where it's like, let's use the budget that we have from before to kind of run those numbers. I can tell you that including the $19 million, obviously, if that were all public, let's just say. Just to make it easy, right? I think that closes the public gap and probably leaves a little bit aside for it potentially. Doesn't include the riverfront part, obviously, that includes One Monument Square, hopefully, those two parcels. If you look at the private side of things, it really depends because interest rates are changing constantly. They're gonna have to be financing. There's also the cost of children fluctuating both up and down now. Before it was just out, at least some things are starting to come down, a lot of things go back up. So it's very hard for us to put a point on it, but there is a number that they have that, you know, they can share for sure. I don't want to speak out of turn and pretend that I can give you an exact number, and I don't want to make it mislead anybody and come to the news.
Yeah, I understand it's a much larger project, but I guess for me, it's like a little bit difficult to kind of feel that settled with that, given that there's other developments happening in the city and they're able to provide a budget and all that. It's not because it's on you or.
No, I understand that. Look, I could say this because everyone was there at the meeting. We, I think the developer came in and knew that they had to deliver something that was really going to help. Because that is a very divisive, I think we can all agree it's a very divisive site. And as a result, we had a project that was going to make it, but barely, before all this stuff happened. Because they wanted to design this thing, they, to their credit, they went with what the public wanted, and they really tried to deliver it. But it's a limited site, right? You only have so much space in that site they devote towards apartments. There was a huge pushback against a certain height, so not only could they go high, but they couldn't go high as well. And as a result, they had a certain number of apartments to make a massive expense work out, and that expense started going through the roof, and the apartments the rent doesn't go at the same rate as the materials did. So as a result, they were kind of left seeing a hole get bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're at a point now where either something needs to change or they need to come up with some more money. But again, it's because these other projects didn't have the designs and what these guys designed. It's very nice.
Any other council members? Okay, I do want to sort of, you know, moving things back together. I know the governor, big priority for her is increasing housing and building more housing throughout the state because we are in a housing crisis. And that there is a lot of money to help support the development of housing, you know, housing authority, seen it in a lot of different projects and with Monument Square as well. And that is pursuing that to help get additional housing and our existing housing stock restored and accessory dwelling units brought into all of our neighborhoods. That is a big piece where your department can have a lot of power and influence. And that grant coordination person could be a real keystone in that. And so I cannot stress enough that I think that position is one that really I would ask you to work to aggressively fill. And if they can take on some of the ARPA responsibilities, they get out of the deputy mayor's office, we're saving money. And we're getting that money out into our community, which is the entire. So you've done absolutely great work with a lot on the plate. So, you know, I want to make sure you've got a full team helping you because you guys are doing a lot of good stuff.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other council members, final questions? I'll take a motion to adjourn. I will second it. All in favor?
All right.
We are adjourned.
Have a good night.
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you guys do the CDBG earlier? Oh,
No,
you guys,
We'll be quick.
yeah.
all right, then. How do you go into reconvene? We will reconvene.
You have to take a look.
I will motion to reconvene.
You don't give it.
Then. I'm looking, but council member, sorry, as a. Yeah, motion. Second. We are reconvened. All in favor? All in favor. All in favor. Thank you.
Robert's rule.
Robert's rules.
Want to be volatile.
I beg your pardon. Andy, I got ahead of myself, I apologize.
So Carolyn couldn't be here tonight. It's on page 159. There's no real change in the budget and it's all 100% reimbursable under fees, monies in the CDBG.
And I guess I will say, ask Carolyn, just for our own education, what planned sidewalk projects for next year are, unless you happen to know it off the top of your head? No,
Carolyn will have the answer to that.
I don't have. Thank you. Councilmember Zorita,
These are all contractual positions.
Yes. Trying to find something new to say.
Yeah. I don't see any changes, I mean, money wise, yes, but that's contractual, but I don't see any changes in position. Except for, I mean, last year it was taken out the CDBG outreach coordinator. But other than that, so I don't see any changes.
Chair,
Council President.
awesome. When Andy, second Andy comes up, hi Andy.
I would like to hear how the coordination's going with CDBG and paving program for the lab replacement. Okay, thank you.
Andy, is there anything you want to touch on for zoning and planning boards?
No change.
No change. All right. I'll find out which sidewalks are getting repaired and replaced. And is there anything regarding the emergency shelter programs that have changed or?
I don't believe so, but I would defer all the program questions to Carolyn.
Thank you very much. Do any other council members have any questions? I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion. Second, all in favor, aye. We are adjourned. Again. Here and I'm not told.
Everyone, thank you, for joining us for the Public Utilities Committee, meeting, and we will be discussing the budget, but if we can all please rise for the pledge. Thank you. Of the United States of America. Committee members are, that are present. We have, Councilmember Conley Wilson. Councilmember Figueroa is absent. We have Council President ex officio, Carmel Mantello. She is here. Member Soriento, that's me. I am sharing this. Also present is, Councilmember Men, Councilmember Steele, and Councilmember Golley. Also with us is, Mayor Patrick Madden, Deputy Mayor Chris Nolan, Comptroller Andy Petrowski, and Andrew Golden from Public Utilities. All right. So, y'all wanna just take it away?
You want to start?
Do you wanna do DPU garage? Should we do garage? That,
Okay.
yeah, 60/40, so that each do what we got.
You want to do revenues first, or kind of tell the story of expenditures to get to revenues? You guys, which one?
I mean, I prefer revenues first.
Yeah,
There's a handout.
I was waiting for your story.
Well, story is salaries, benefits, and the new department for the lead replacement line. And debt, which just if I can touch on for a second with debt. Water transmission main phase 1. and The water transmission main phase 1 project is nearing 100% completion from a financial perspective. The work is 100% done. We're now beginning the process of closing out the financial side with environmental facilities. It's a large debt amount and it's on short term. And unlike sewer, there is an interest rate with it. I think it's somewhere around 3%. With the magnitude of debt that's outstanding on short term for the project, the payback next year between principal and interest is somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. It is an increase from last year, if I recall correctly, about 100 to 200,000 just in the principal and interest costs. Tricky part about, unlike our short-term debt where we can calculate a minimum pay, do your minimum payback. EFC does not provide that. You have to do your best guess as to what it's going to be. So I've approximated $315,000 in principal paid on the short-term debt next year for the transmission main, which falls in line with what we paid this year, plus additional disbursements from EFC for debt that will occur before the end of the year to close out the project. The goal with the transmission main project is to get it to long-term debt next year. The city is beholden to EFC's calendar. I just bring that up because that has resulted in the budget, including a proposed rate increase of 40 cents per 1,000 gallons, similar to that of last year. The handout you have before you, similar to prior years, it's just city water, city sewer. It does not account for county sewer. And this is my family's bill, as we usually show. So for a family of 4, it ranges between a $3.85 to $4.70 increase per quarter. That's the basis for, that's the story of how, what led to that. And then you had the addition of F83, 89, the other water department. That name comes from the state comptroller's office. That's the staff that's handling lead replacement. Revenues on page 207.
Chair, Council President.
Could Andy, since now, take a step back, just page 6, can you go through then the New York State EFC, now that you're going more in the lead? I think it would help us understand, the band numbers, serial bonds, et cetera. And then, I guess, are we being reimbursed for some of the bonding that we did?
We will be. I'm working with mayor's office and corporation council on next steps to get that result. That's something that Chris Wellen had been working on. I've been working on it in conjunction with him. Obviously, with his departure, I've taken the lead on working on that now. It's figuring out if it's required to have, so there's the language in the contract itself with every individual, with the wholesale communities. Everyone has that language.
Right.
It's resolving if that language is clear enough, is clear as to how you determine everyone's percentage. Or if a separate MOA that everyone would sign on one document that says your percentage is X based off of Y consumption and have it go down to avoid any confusion amongst those other governments. So that's what we're working through now. At that point, we would get reimbursed for those.
Sounds really webby.
One way to put it, but yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go,
Probably,
so page 6, in the water fund, the bond anticipation notes of 16.8 million that's exclusively the first phase of the transmission main project. We've closed out every other short-term water-related debt instrument that we had with EFC. That 16.8 will rise before the end of the year. I would guess somewhere $1.5 to $2 million. So figure at December 31st, that number will hover around 18.5 to 19 million. Carried over until next year. Right after we get what we've decided we're gonna do is get all the closeout invoices in and then submit one reimbursement from EFC. We seem to be able to handle that cash flow wise. That will allow us to review all of the invoices that we paid because EFC just recently approved the engineer on the project for reimbursement. And this goes to what Chris had been talking about with the red tape that comes to those grants. I mean, we've been talking about that transmission main project for years, and they just recently approved the MWBE requirements on CDM Smith. And that was, I believe, for construction and administration,
not for,
but they had already approved them years ago for the design, but then they had to get reapproved. So there's a large chunk of money that we've already paid that we have to submit for, but we'll do it all in one motion, and we'll also save on interest costs because they charge you by the day, 360-day calendar year. And once we submit that, and they pay us the next day, the city should be requesting to get on the calendar to go long term. And I say that because there's going to be a reconciliation at the end of the project to true up the grant and the debt. And then get it out and get it to long term before the second phase really starts in late 2024, early 2025. Just to get this part done financially to then transition into the second phase. Do not have overlapping short-term instruments with us.
can maybe, I'm not sure, who's overseeing that project now, are you, Andy?
Yeah,
Um,
for the phase 2 or the phase 1 of
The
that
phase
transmission
one.
main. Yeah, I guess I am, and Dave's helping me out with that, so between the two of us and Andy, we're trying to sort all that out.
I see a bunch of work down Scottico area and whereabouts, what's phase 2 and what will the completion be in phase 1?
Completion for the construction of phase 1 just wrapped up. I think it was like last week. They finished up everything off Irish Road. and
Yeah,
Did a lot of like the remaining like stormwater check off list items, and phase 2 is going to go from Church Street to the Tom Hannock. We're still quite a ways out on that. Still like a design phase.
okay. So they're designing that part right now, that's why you said shovels in the ground end of 2024. Okay.
The serial bonds in the water fund relate to water tank work that was done several years ago. And then the serial bonds, 2.7 million, that's old projects. That's primarily 33-inch water main replacement project from 2016 in Lansing. That serial bond, the serial bonds outstanding there, yes. That excuse me, the principal portion of that 2.7 million is that project. 2017 number.
Yeah. That was.
And then while we're here, the sewer fund. Both the bans and the bonds for sewer both relate to the CSO project. There's, I think at this point, 5 or 6 different tranches of debt that are out on that project itself.
Member Cummings.
Is any of this related to the lead service line? I thought we bonded for lead service. Could you be-
No, we are not able to bond for we have not issued that, we have not issued bond resolutions for lead replacement. We are still unable to do debt for the private side under the New York State Constitution.
Chair,
Council President?
just, council member Conley Wilson, we appropriated ARPA and then water fund money.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. And Andy can give us a good update on that too.
And it's seriously update, do that now.
So the lead service program update for now, we've completed all the work on 4th Street. 5th Ave, been completed, State Street, from River to Broadway is done. Now we hit a couple of our one-off projects that we needed to take care of, and now we're gonna relocate to Excelsior, probably for the remainder of the construction. Which hopefully the weather cooperates and we can keep going, into December.
Sure.
Council President?
Aren't you in the Berg also, Andy? I thought they were in the Berg too, so.
Yeah, they did, we were at 5th Ave from 102nd to 104th.
Oh, that's all right, good, to 104th, and some folks thought that you were coming around the corner on 7th, and yeah, not this year.
Not this year, but to tie that in with the question about the sidewalks next year, we're going to be on 2nd Ave from 101st to 103rd. They're doing sidewalk replacements. We're going to do lead services there, as well as 5th Ave from 101st to 102nd. So we will be back in the area in the spring.
Sure.
Council President?
Can you give us how many, and then, and financial?
Yep, yes, we've done 86 replacements so far this year. We spent $850,000 roughly. We're up to about 44% verification wise, which is pretty good. So we still have around 6,800 out there that are unknown. So if anybody's itching to report what they've got, feel free. I think that's all of the information I have for now on that, just a quick update, so.
Andy, I really liked, I said it at that finance meeting, the flyer that went in. It was flashier than the norm, not your regular everyday.
Right, that one kind of jumped out a little bit.
It was needed, so if we could do more of that, because, obviously, we're out there walking now and people are asking questions and, that definitely brought some attention.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. There will be more of those going out. We're still, designing a couple other ones, so.
While we're on an insert, I know the letter from the mayor also went out about the chemicals. If you could just quickly touch upon that, because some people got really concerned with the lead replacement and hand in hand, and I'm sure DOH mandated that letter, but.
Right, yeah, so those, THMs, trihalomethanes, we were in a violation in one of the service areas for the amount of THMs. It's a byproduct of chlorine mixing with organics. So like late in the season, August, September, we have a high amount of organics in the water, seaweed, algae, all these other natural things in the reservoir. And in the disinfection process, we had the chlorine, and that's a created byproduct from that. And that was only in the high service area. that we had a minimal by, I think it was like 81 parts per billion or something. I think the MCL is 80, the maximum contaminant level.
I wish there was some way to explain what you just said in layman's terms.
I wish there was too.
I was really surprised because a lot of people, I hate to say, including myself, sometimes you get that 2 or 3 page
Right.
and you don't read it. Well, people now are really very attentive because of the lead and the pipes and the replacement programs, which is a good thing. People are really in tune, but a lot of folks didn't understand that. Is there any
Yeah.
way, like in the future, to put a cover page and kind of put in more maintenance terms?
That is duly noted. Yeah, we will work on that. And one of the other things with that letter, I think across the top, it said notice of violation. Which was a notice of our violation to them, but a lot of people called and said, I pay my water bill.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just needed to-" They thought that they were in violation.
Immediately, people literally come up, we didn't do anything, yeah.
Yeah, it caused a lot more, and I don't want to call it an uproar, but we did get a lot of phone calls and traffic about that.
Good, sir.
And while we were on the phone with them, we said, have you been on the troyny.gov/lead website, and we try to, kind of factor that in as well.
That's a great ploy, okay, great, if that was your motive.
It wasn't, but it ended up working out.
I'm good.
I guess for those letters, are those, I was under the impression that the wording for that was required by the Department of Health, so.
That is
But you
correct.
can add other information
Right, there's,
with that,
they provide 3 or 4 paragraphs that can't be touched.
got it,
That need to go into every one of those, specific letters for whichever, violation it is. But we could add, a cover page or something in there like, hey, this is kind of like a quick explanation. So that's noted and we'll do that in the future.
great, awesome. And then relating to the lead service line replacement projects, I know that we, piggybacked off of, was it Syracuse for the, water filters.
Rochester.
Rochester, I know they're very different cities, but, yeah, I'm curious, have we gotten those? Do we know where those are? I know, I feel like Chris updated me last time on that, where we didn't have anything.
So we have gotten our first round of filters. We are handing them out. Rochester has renewed that bid for next, till the end of July 2024. So we have the ability to continue purchasing them, and we've been handing them out every day of the week.
And are those going to, the buildings in which have already been replaced, or are those going to folks who are waiting?
We're doing a little bit of both. So the folks that get the line replaced, the contractor that's replacing the line is providing every unit in that building with the filter and instructions. We are handing them out on the side to folks in our lead monitoring program. Anyone that's verified that has a lead service, we've been providing them to those folks, and we're kind of going area by area in the city, handing those out.
That's good to hear. And, I don't think I shared this with you, but I remember sharing this with, Deputy Mayor on the environmental, justice areas, most of Troy. But those might be areas to hit and kind of maybe doing an overlay on, where we're seeing a lot of lead pipes versus not. And then I just have another question. I know, kind of talking to some constituents, some folks were concerned about, hey, my building is being marked as not as like free of lead, but there is lead in the service line. So I'm just kind of curious what's your kind of process around verifying those pieces of information to get those things.
Gotcha. Okay, so folks will submit a photo on the website, or we'll do an in-person verification. And that'll deem what they have inside the building. And then there's also the public side of the line from the curb box out to the street, which we don't have like visual access to. So that's where they've been doing like the exploratory digging, the potholing, that kind of excavation work. or we can kind of gain some information through the water, testing program. So then we can kind of go from there as far as verifying the public side.
Yeah, and I hope we can, sorry, bouncing back to water filters, I hope we can piggyback onto that. I don't know if there's any like resources for, I know those filters need to be replaced every so often. I know there's some help with that, or if you directing folks to, here's where you can buy a new water filter once that expires, or here are the ones that you should be purchasing, just so the public knows, like, not every like Brita filter is going to work.
Right, it has to be very specific filter. So the NSF 53, that's the filter you want that's has lead reduction. And I think through that, I can check this out, but I think through that Brita bid, we might be able to get just the filters without the pictures. So far, I've been getting pictures with the filters, just to kind of start the program, but after some time, I think we could just get the filters if people wanted to hold on to the physical picture itself. We could just give like a replacement cartridge.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And then, sorry. Do we have any like applications open right now, or that we're applying for right now for the lead service lines for the next year and future years?
Is it like certain areas that we're going to focus on for next year?
I'm more asking about the financials, like for the grant writing, like how we apply to more grants.
So there's going to.
I'll let Andrew speak to the grants. I know we applied for our replacement grant, and I believe we were recently awarded a grant for inventory. However, with regard to the financials, what you will see that Thursday, but shortly thereafter, we're going to be requesting to appropriate an additional $500,000 from the fund balance of the water fund for the lead replacement project. That would be dedicated to public side replacement. That should leave hopefully about $2 million available for next year. Still obviously in the middle of construction season. I know DOH is reviewing our first submission for the grant for lead replacement. I will say Andrew and Dave Badgley deserve a ton of credit since DOH is reviewing each property individually with questions. We had a 1-hour preliminary call with them today, which they ended and said that they will be following up with questions on each individual property. Kudos to the two of them for that. So the goal of this is to give $2 million. However, it also would hold the ARPA money. The goal of this should be to exclusively use that ARPA money for private side replacement as long as possible. So it's replenishing the public side, holding the private side until this constitutional issue gets resolved and allows them enough appropriations to implement their replacement project that they want for next year, while the grant that Andrew's about to talk about for replacement is determined for the fall for 25's fiscal year.
So I think there was a grant through our engineering folks we were talking to, a grant for $14.2 million for lead replacement. I'll have to do a little more research on where that stands right now. That's still very much in the preliminary phase, but we're looking forward to that. I think that would be a huge help.
Awesome. Andrew, when you have a chance, can you just, if you could send over like a list of the grants that you applied to and kind of where they're at?
Okay,
And
absolutely.
if it's like federal or state, I think that would be helpful for us.
Okay, yeah, I definitely do that.
Sure, yep. That's really good news, Lindsay. And I would say, the constitutional issue, other municipalities are probably having, similar, issues, difficulty, et cetera, finding money for this important program. Like I know other municipalities across the state now are kind of following our lead with a similar lead replacement program where they're paying for it. So I would think that that issue, have we had any conversations with, John McDonald or, Jake Ashley on it?
There's a split of opinion in Albany as to whether state money can be used. Now, so the state money that we've accessed so far is federally sourced. So there is agreement that the federally sourced money is not burdened with the same restrictions as state money. There's a split of opinion in Albany right now about whether state dollars are burdened by this constitutional clause. However, our bond counsel is saying nothing that the state has passed overrides that constitutional restriction. So we could not get a clean opinion if we were to go out and bond for this. Many other communities are looking at it the same way. Some are completely ignoring it. I think that I think there is a solution, but it's so simple that I probably, if I think it's a solution, it probably isn't because other people. So we're still struggling with that question, which is why we're going through the gymnastics of billing each specific job in three components. One is the potholing to determine which lines are lead. One is the public side and one is the private side. So the spreadsheets are massive to keep track of this and impressive. But those are the gymnastics we have to go through right now. And I think that it's safe to say what we're also discovering is that the per building cost is higher than we anticipated. I think we spoke of the number of maybe 7,500 when we talked earlier in the year on this. It seems as though we're closer to $10,000 per structure, which is in keeping with what we're hearing from other communities as well. So we're not an outlier on this. And the reason we're looking to ensure that we have $2 million available next year is because the contractor that we're using would like to put 2 teams out next year and double productivity. This being the first year they were working out the kinks. Their systems are much improved. They have the equipment now to do the work that they need to do. So we should make greater progress next year. But if we have $2 million, we think that we can put 2 teams contractors out there. So at a minimum, double the product.
Chair.
Council President, are you on that?
Oh,
Okay.
Mayor Madden, do you know of any like open cases with municipalities that have tried to like fight back on that or see if there's any like for the state issue with the funds?
I don't know, when you say open cases, do you mean like?
Yeah, court cases.
Yeah, I've not heard of any where that's.
Yeah, neither have I,
But you know, there's a cohort out there in the community that challenges across the state that challenges all sorts of municipal financing, and they can tie you up in knots and cause you to spend lots of money on lawyers instead of replacing lead pipes. So we're trying to walk through this gingerly and make sure that we don't get the city in trouble.
yeah, no, I totally understand. Just trying to see if there's anything that's been done, so. I think there's some movement on that already. Yeah.
Chair. Council President, so I'm guessing your simple solution would be the billing, right? Is that what you're thinking? We want to hear it.
My simple solution would be to have the New York State Department of Health declare this a national health emergency.
I like
And then the investment on the public side, I'm sorry, on the private side would be considered incidental to the expenditure of funds because we're pursuing a collective public health goal. There are cases out there where public funds have been spent for private purposes, and have been deemed to be authorized because they serve, they're incidental to a public health crisis or a public health improvement. And I've suggested it, got nowhere, so I'm missing something.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. If you think about it, the hurricanes, I mean, I know federal FEMA money, Homeland Security, all that was used, but so was a ton of state money, and that was for private homes. So, and that was a disaster, obviously. So I wonder what they did at that time to qualify it, but I love it. I think it's a great idea.
My first one.
No.
Thirteen years. Sorry, 7 years, 10 months, whatever month.
Thank you. Such a trouble.
I wouldn't want to be.
We're still waiting on your.
Touche.
Never hear mine, because I always put it into the back door, somebody hears it from one of you guys.
Yeah,
I don't
Jim
mind
keeps
when-
taking credit.
I don't need that.
On that note, I actually do agree with council member Steele. Let's get back to the budget. Talk numbers here.
Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Gully.
do you have any programs set up for emergency situations, with lead replacement? Like some, you know, I know you guys inspect a lot of houses, but some are probably in worse shape than others.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so there is a section of that bid for like the other
One-off.
replacement, the one-off replacement, which would be if you have like, your water service is leaking, so you have water like pouring into your basement, we will come out and replace that line. If a homeowner, property owner, they replace the private portion of the line and they notify us, through the Department of Health, we have 45 days to replace the public side, if that's lead as well. So that's one that kind of puts us onto a timetable for replacement. So we were, you know, we're on Fifth Avenue. Previously, we had to leave there a couple times to go do a few other projects elsewhere in the city and then report back. So that does happen, yes.
And does the property owner pay for that private side to get done? Is that
No.
part of the plan?
That's part of the plan. Yep, that goes into the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Chair. Councilmember Conley Wilson.
Just on the, I've heard of folks having issues with their like sewer, after, I think it's falling like heating, projects, but like folks have, like up in the Berg and on Fourth Street having sewer issues after paving's been done.
Okay, after the paving, on those like parts of the lead project in those areas or,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
okay, I'll definitely check that out.
Great. And if folks are having that problem, where should they just call DPU? Or is there like a specific?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, call DPU and report that and somebody else can take a look at it.
Yeah.
Let's start with revenues.
Sure.
Page 207. So the basis for every municipality's budgeted revenues for next year was looking at their consumptions over the last 3 years, putting it up against their current per 1,000-gallon rate, then comparing that to the actual totals that we have seen, and then, so we have a gallon analysis, and then comparing that calculation to what the actual dollar revenues were 2022 and for the first 6 months of 2023. You come up with the estimates of 2024. There's the exception to that. And then calculated what the rate change, what the increased rate would be needed to balance the budget, which is why it came out to be 40 cents per 1,000 gallons. So city of Troy's reflects back to the 5.325 million. Reflects back to the actual gallons used in 21, 22. So sorry, 20, 22, and then this early on in 23. Since I know it will be asked, Waterford and Half Moon, as you will see, have been adjusted down. Now, I will note that for years, we have combined 4 quarters a year. For years, we've combined the account for Waterford and Half Moon. We actually build them separately, so I've never really understood why we needed one account. So I've split it out, so it's a total net revenue decrease of 250,000 between the two. But going forward, it'll allow for better tracking of each one. It's gonna make it easier, more efficient to track which ones, hopefully staying the same at least, but which one's going down or year over year. But it was aligned with what we've seen in the prior, what you saw in 2022.
Council President? This is really helpful. I like breaking them out, because now at least you have a better idea what's going on. Do you think, Andy, it's overly ambitious, some of the estimates? I know our water rate is being proposed to go up. Are the other municipalities looking similar, or?
So the non-wholesale communities would also have a 40-cent rate increase. That would be Brunswick, Scotticoke, Poston Kill. I believe those are the ones. I might be missing one there. North Rensselaer, East Greenbush, Waterford, Half Moon are all on wholesale rates. However, they have escalators subject to CPI. One of them is, they went up around 7% this year. Obviously, that's contingent on CPI. But again, it was based off their historical actual revenue number, but also their flows. That I had started to work on this with Chris before he left, and then finished it up subsequent to his departure. It's tough to compare 2022 to 2024 for some of them, because 2023 has a 47 rate increase for say roughly half the local governments, and then it's also then in 2024 proposed to have the 47 rate increase as well.
Yeah, because you're looking at a big jump in Brunswick.
The Brunswick's usage has also significantly.
Well, the development,
Yes.
I mean, they're killing them. Okay, here, that could for traffic.
And then the other revenues kept them consistent with what you've seen in prior years. I will note one thing because it does stick out here. In use of money and property, you'll see a negative for rental of city-owned property, but I budgeted $250,000. And then below that is lease revenue, which I budgeted 0 for. That's Walter had talked a lot about it. I had talked a lot about it. That's the GASB 87, the lease revenue recognition. I thought it would be best in the budget to reflect non-accounting world revenues and reflect what the money in that we receive, and then there would be an adjustment there forward to adhere to GASB 87. Which is why you're seeing it that way. That's how we have to reflect it on our records post year end when we do the accounting for GASB 87.
And Chair, I don't know if I still have the floor, but the discussion with the Masonic Temple, where is that? Yeah, that Chris explained.
I had spoke with the Corporation Council today about the next steps forward to at least purchase the property soon. The design is radar.
And where is that reflected here?
It won't be reflected in the budget because we've already done the appropriate. So we did the $500,000 fund balance appropriation, and then the $1.5 million bond resolution. The $500,000 fund balance appropriation will be used to purchase the property. That's all going to be accounted for in the capital projects.
Chair.
Councilmember Thomas.
Andy, I just had a question about, the water service charges. Last year, we estimated 67,000 and it's back up to where it was for 2022. I'm just kind of curious about that.
That's a tricky one because it's dependent on the number of services that we do. So I looked at where we were 2023, but also looking back at try to budget that consistent with what we've seen in recent years. So 127.5 is based off 22's number. I believe also 21 as well.
Anybody else have a question? So, we'll go with summary of appropriations.
So this is the summary for each department. If you want to get right into the departments, we can go to page 210. For the garage, generally speaking, for the water and sewer funds, both funds budgets respectively, see a lot of status quo in the 200, 300, 400 accounts. With regards to the permanent salaries in the garage, decrease in the salaries is because of vacancies and adjusting the steps. But this department, all salary changes are contractual. Any questions? 17, the next page, 213, 1710 is the water funds. Yeah, there's their proportionate share of costs related to health insurance administration, workers' comp administration, and the workers' compensation board. Moving on to 215. Permanent salaries, they're as referenced in the mayor's budget message. This does include the increase in the salary for superintendent of public utilities. Other than that, salary changes in this department are contractual.
Yeah, it looks like $100,000 jump. So the rest is,
So part of that is that is the salary change for the superintendent is part of that. Also, if you look at page 217, you'll see the principal account clerk, third from the bottom. That's go back to last Thursday when I had talked about how I took the account clerk out of 1315 and moved it over, and then we reclassified a title. This is the title that was reclassified. Well, I guess principal account clerk would have been a new position.
it is, it looks like it is.
Now that I think of what we did, it was a senior account clerk. That was in another department, if I recall correctly, that we then reclassified and moved it to this department. And then created a radio dispatcher position.
Yeah,
But I think I believe the senior account clerk is in another department.
it's transmission.
Yes. It should be 0 for next year. So we took the senior account clerk out of transmission, moved it to administration, and then created the radio dispatcher position
Into transmission.
that replaced the senior
And
account. clerk.
upgraded the senior account clerk to principal account clerk in administration.
Correct.
Anybody have any questions?
Chair,
Yes. Councilmember Gully.
Mr. Mayor, just out of curiosity, since the resignation of Chris Whelan, has there been any inquiries or any resumes or anybody posted any interest toward that position at the current salary?
No,
We've had no resumes, no interest.
correct.
Thank you.
Chair. Council President? Yep, the RFP went out, Mayor Andy or Andy, for an operator for the interim. Any,
We got no,
Like-
we received no responses.
I, was just reading this, it was in my mail from H2M. They don't have local folks, they said, so they declined. They sent the mayor a letter, so I'll make a copy for the council, but basically, you know, they're declining because, sounds like just to have someone here, consistently would be very difficult for them. When does that RFP close?
That already has. We received no responses.
None.
None.
What about CDM? They weren't interested in me?
They don't have that.
If I recall correctly, they don't have employees with the license that's needed.
Are all these positions currently filled
In 83,
in 8310?
no, well.
Well,
with the-
besides,
with-
besides
In
superintendent, but-
8310, everything's filled, but superintendent.
okay,
If it has the current salary is 0. And it has it, so if it has a 1 under 2023 number of positions,
yeah,
but and the current salary is 0, it's a vacant, it is currently vacant. Or was vacant as of September 30th-ish, when we finished personnel.
now, the last meeting we had about this, there was, several people out on, workers' comp. Has, I think, we were told between 4 and 6. Has anyone returned? How many people are still out?
I think we're still the same amount out, nobody's come back. Yeah,
Is it
still
6
full.
or,
I can find out for sure. Like,
okay,
yeah, it's in that, ballpark. I was gonna say 5, but I can find out.
with the superintendent of public utilities, I kind of, where has this been advertised?
I
We're gonna look to push it out further.
Okay.
Creative subdivision.
Okay. All right, so it hasn't been advertised at all though, besides pushing out the,
Oh, I believe it's posted.
okay.
Chair,
Councilor Billy?
posted where? Just in the hallway here?
Yeah, I have to check exactly where that position was posted. We are looking to post it in the trade magazines.
How about some of the headhunter companies that are right around here to deal with many professionals across the state?
We can certainly look at that as well.
I mean, I would think that if you're gonna go to a search, you're gonna go where professionals are that are looking for positions. Troy Records are gonna get us far.
LinkedIn, bunch of them.
There's many.
I mean, there's definitely, the networks are definitely great, Indeed. I mean, it's gonna cost money, but for a position like this. We're spending the money to advertise,
We are gonna start looking at all that.
yeah. Okay. And also, I just wanted to point out, the last meeting that we had, this position was not on the vacancy list. And it was after he resigned, Rich resigned. Just wanted to point that out. I did notice that. Was that done in error?
No. Under the emergency declaration and to maintain the license, Chris is still an active part-time employee.
Okay,
If it was not for that, we have no one
That-
to operate the plant.
Yeah, I
So
was,
that's why, so it was, that was certainly discussed, right? Is it vacant? It's technically not vacant because he's encumbering it. on a
Okay.
part-time basis.
but on a part-time basis, is that currently happening?
He is
Yeah.
still a part-time employee.
Okay. Okay. Chair. President,
So do we have an agreement, much like we had to pass an agreement for Mara to stay on board as a consultant, and we approved that? Who approved this?
He came back as an employee, not as a consultant.
What's his salary?
I'd have to check. I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, I get the whole license, I don't get that, but we are where we are, but. Yeah, I think the council should definitely know what's going on.
Yeah.
I honestly would like to take a step back and have one of you explain obviously, there's a proposal here, which the mayor talked about in his message. We should hear what the proposal is.
The proposal, as I discussed a month or so ago, it was to recreate the positions envisioned in the city charter so that we would have a water plant. Okay, supervisor of water plant, supervisor of water, which means supervisor of water distribution, and supervisor of sewers. All serving under the superintendent of Department of Public Utilities. As I discussed then, and I could share with you notes from that meeting, if you like, the demands on the department have gotten to be too great for one person to handle. There are issues that we're struggling to keep current on. There are increasing regulatory requirements. We have the whole lead service line replacement program. We're looking at a new water treatment program, which is a significant change in how water is treated to reduce its corrosivity. We have aging plant issues. We have phase 2 of the water line replacement program. We have pumps that need to be replaced, and that can't all be handled by one person. So we are suffering right now in project planning and oversight. I don't want to leave this mess for the next mayor. I want there to be sufficient resources in place. I want there to be a sufficient structure in place so that we can carry out the obligations that we are obligated to carry out in order to legally and competently supply water to our 140,000 or so customers.
Chair,
Councilmember Gully.
Andy. Of the plant now currently, do we have anybody who handles the water side?
The water side for distribution,
Who handles that now?
Rudy handles that now.
Rudy, and who handles the sewer supervision there? Who handles the operation of the sewer plant?
That would be Pat.
So we have people in place to handle water and sewer.
On
Chris
the,
was the commissioner.
on the day-to-day level, they handle that. They don't handle all the paperwork involved in water and sewer service applications. All of our permitting for the DEC, for the Speedies permit, for the lagoons, our CSO program, the, stormwater, removal programs. All of that stuff on like a more administrative level, they don't handle any of that. I have to handle all of that now.
They handle mostly like the mechanical of the operation.
Exactly, yep. Getting the water from the plant to the buildings and sewer from the buildings to the Rensselaer County treatment plant.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chair.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Really.
So at our last public utilities meeting, when you basically brought forward the proposal that you've now put into the budget. One of the concerns was that it was basically a half revamp for the park. And, have you had a conversation with CSEA regarding what the other half of that would look like for this park thing?
I'm sorry, what kind of conversation?
Any conversation, because I believe the president of CSEA said that he's trying to have a conversation with starters for a while.
No, he's never contacted me.
Have you contacted him?
No.
Would you be open to doing that?
Well, so the CSEA contract runs for another year.
I'm aware of
If
that.
the CSEA would like to reopen that contract, or if the council would like to do something to reopen that contract, then we have to have a discussion about taxes and water rates in the city. If you're willing to do that, I'm willing to do that. But I wasn't going to propose a massive tax increase on my way out the door without cooperation from the council. It's got to be a joint effort.
Well, I mean, that's an assumption that you're working off of. It seems like, because some of the conversations that I've had with CSEA leadership has been not so much, it's been more of a disruption, and the water department, its own fund does allow.
Lifestyle.
Oh, I beg your pardon. The water department with its own fund does allow a renegotiation, an MOU, and something that could be then extended when they go into contract negotiations next year. Next year will be a year of contract negotiations with CSEA. And so the fact that there has been no conversation, and I believe that that was one of the points that came out of that public utilities meeting, was it's time to have a conversation. You can come and say to us, oh, the water rates will go up and the taxes will go up, but we don't actually know that because no one's actually talked to each other. So would you be open for the end of the time that we finish the budget to have a conversation with CSEA to discuss the water department?
So I would have to defer to council about how we would approach that conversation of reopening a contract. But I will remind you that CSEA is broader than the service, DPU. And it would impact the entire workforce, so it's not just water rate increase we're looking at. And again, I think I wrote a memo to the council after that meeting. I received no reply. I don't know where you want to go with this. If you tell me where you want to go with this, we'll be happy to price it out for you and let you know.
I would like you to have a conversation with the president of CSEA and see if there's anything that can be put on the table and to open that line of communication. I don't think that's and the answer may be, there's nothing we can do. We'll see you when we're negotiating a contract, but if you don't talk, nothing changes. What's the definition of insanity? Do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So you've come to us with budget now with a proposal that we said we would table because we've asked to have additional conversations have happened between CSEA, between the mayor's office, and it did not happen, and there was no effort.
Well, there wasn't, but I'm sorry. I did send you a memo, as I indicated. I posed several questions, and you did not hear from a single council member on that. If you give me some parameters of how you want to move on this, then, as I said, we can cost it out and we can work with you and we can work with the union. But I need to know where you want to go with this. What do you want to do to the tax rate? What do you want to do to the water rate? What do you want to do? This is not, this is going to require both of us working together, but you know, I'll resend that memo if you'd like.
Yeah. It was, okay.
I remember not responding because the building next door collapsed, so I was kind of.
You have an excuse.
We had a common excuse to get here, but, sorry, I'm.
All right.
I had it every time I heard that. Chair,
Councilmember Gully.
How do we advertise for these positions?
I know they're on the website. I would have to check the personnel department, to see if there's other efforts at outreach.
But do we do any type of outreach, like, hey, City Troy's hiring besides you?
Yes, I think Chris Whalen had spoken about working with the school districts, getting the word out through the school districts.
Spoken or did?
I'm sorry,
Spoken or did?
he had spoken about the efforts he made with the school district to get the word to them, to their students.
How many open positions do we have in DPO?
I think it's
It's not out with comp or Phil, but out in injury with open,
I believe it's 11.
11 open. Does it seem to be more of like our CDL required operators that we're lacking? Or is
No, it seems to be across the board.
that a cheat sheet?
This is what was emailed out to the council a couple days ago by personnel department, the monthly list of vacant
Oh, okay.
positions. So just quickly, assistant operations manager, assistant water plant operator, trainee, water plant equipment maintenance mechanic, water plant instrument technician, water plant maintenance supervisor. That goes on. There's really, I see one laborer. I don't see any MEOs in DPU. Some of these. Oh, some of these.
Okay.
Some will require. I just, but it's across the board. There's a lot of positions and some of them are just in the phase of turnover.
I just tend to wonder whether we're doing our due diligence at getting the word out. Are we just minimizing the positions in their advertisement? Or we really put a wholehearted effort in getting the word out there that we have these positions open in different courses? To try to, because, I mean, this is difficult to understand why we still have 11 openings. And I just think that, on my part, it said that maybe, just maybe, and I wouldn't know, I mean, I'm not in your office or anything. Just maybe we're not getting word out far enough to get people's eyes and ears on these openings. I just think that there's gotta be people out there that would step up.
I would think so too. And I know it's on the website. I know that it's, we're hiring is prominently featured on the website. I know that I circulate all openings to the African American Pastoral Alliance, the NAACP, some other community groups that I have regular communication with. I know that Chris said that he had spoken to the school districts about these positions. A number of them are entry-level positions, so and I, you know, obviously there's no lists right now, so we can bring people in on a provisional basis, get their foot in the door, do some training. I don't understand why we're having difficulties either, other than I will say that all of the other mayors that I speak with are having the same problems. Albany and Schenectady are troubled with roughly the same number of vacancies as we are.
Well, you know, I understand that because a lot of people really want to work these days. At least that's the way it's seen. But I just think that we're not getting far enough out, reaching far enough out. If you come across enough eyes and ears, you're gonna find somebody with a positive response. I just think we need to go deeper into how we get the message out. That could help us greatly in our, and we need it.
Jan?
Councilmember Cummings?
I will say I've done like some of my own calculations in terms of how much, like, based on the different grades, people like cost of living, essentially seeing, okay, is 30% of the salary in which they're getting, does that even meet, you know, the average housing cost, $1,500 a month? It doesn't. For untaxed income, it's not until we're at step 16 that folks are getting there. For tax income, it's not until step 25 that we're getting there. So a big part of it is not that people don't want to work, it's that people can't afford to work for the city. They need either need to be in some sort of partnership, need to be working, living at home. There's a lot of reasons why this is happening across, you know, our country, across our state, and the civil service. And I understand that we're kind of in a bind here. We can't just like raise salary. I mean, union negotiations and all of that, but I really see that as a big deterrent to both wanting to apply for these positions, or even being willing to take these steps, and then also just not understanding the civil service. Like provisional, like you gotta sign up for a test, and make sure that you attend the test, make sure you study, all of that. And, you know, I know that there's ways that we can reach out to folks, but I think also we need to think about how are we setting up our city for success? How are we reaching, like, you know, serving our workers along with serving our community? Because I do think, you know, out of college, I would not apply to a lot of these jobs because I have student loans, I have rent to pay, I have a whole bunch of other bills that I'm responsible for. So I don't think it's laziness. I really do think it's not being able to afford to do that.
Chair,
Councilor Brennan?
I wasn't going to weigh in, but I just philosophically, as someone who, entered government, over 30 years ago and have state and local and have had various jobs from an administrative job at $12,000 to, a high level job overseeing an agency, but saying that, you know, 30 years ago, working for government was much different than now. And government has changed. Unfortunately, the structure hasn't changed. So for the past 30 years, what I have seen, you kind of hit the note, not just salary though, just the retirement incentives, tier 5, 6, I think there's maybe a 7 on its way. It doesn't incentivize young people to get into government. And me, when I entered government, it was such a big deal. Oh my gosh, I'm working for a state senator, and you know, it's at $12,500, and I worked my way up to a legislative director, but folks aspire to do that somehow, and it's not just the city of Troy, it's the state needs to change just how not just civil service, but government in general. Here in Troy, I do think we can change, and I talked about that, and I'm, you know, obviously in a unique position, so I won't go there, but I do think overall that things need to change in terms of the structure and just trying to incentivize these young folks to enter government. And believe me, you know, government, it's not about making a ton of money. Public service, you know, it's really not about that. At the same time, you need to pay the bill. So. I went on track, yeah.
Chair. Yeah, kind of getting back onto the budget, are there any engineer in the water department? I think I saw one. Outside. So that's all consultants. Do you feel like having an engineer in-house would be helpful for, like, I'm thinking like chemical or chemist or environmental, structural engineers would all be helpful to have in-house?
Oh, I'm sure it would be. We use different engineers for different aspects of our work. And you probably could not hire an engineer that would eliminate all of our consulting engineering costs because they're in different disciplines. As well, sometimes grants will cover the engineering costs, but they won't cover salary costs. While you look at a budget and you may say, well, we could hire an engineer for that, the fact of the matter is that engineer that we consulted with may be covered as part of the grant cost. Wouldn't be if it was a salary cost. So, but sure, I'd love to have a stable of engineers.
Yeah, and I think that could also maybe help with, like with our lab tech, retaining them for a longer time if they have like an opportunity to be like an engineer or get higher up, you know.
go to pumping station. Chair, just a quick question. So, just to get back real quick, the proposal in front of us. How do you feel that that is going to better the department, number one, and with 11 vacancies, encourage filling those vacancies? Like, how does that structure that's being proposed change what I feel DPU needs? Serious attention, but I'm not gonna go there right now. How do you feel that that proposal helps? You know, by bumping salaries, but there's still 11 vacancies.
So there are a number of things that we can't get off the ground that could be, or we're slow getting off the ground, that are funded with grant dollars. So those are situations where we would be bringing in contractor or a consultant to do the work funded by the grant. It's not these positions that I mentioned that were vacant are not critical to those, not all of them are critical to those operations. The problem is Andrew and Chris before him was dealing with everything from writing up personnel problems to trying to talk to our retail and wholesale communities, dealing with DEC, dealing with dam inspection, and you know, when you're spread that thin, you can't address the projects that are critical, maybe not today, but they're critical to the continued operation of our system as early as next year, but more so further down the road. So these are the sorts of things that we need to address. I mean, it's absolutely critical. We're playing with fire if we do not address these things. It also frees up supervisors so they can do more of the outreach, and they, you know, attend the water meetings and talk to others about how they're filling vacancies. Go to the schools more often, go to Hudson Valley. You know, that is a typical important but not urgent thing. The department, Andrew right now, Principal Court, all they deal with are urgent things. Okay, the pump isn't running on Eddie's Lane, or a water main break here, or a sewer collapse here. Nobody is getting to the important stuff. They're only able to get to the urgent stuff. So we have to start building the structure, and we can fill in below, but you know, again, some of the things that we're not getting aren't being done by the people, but they're being done by contractors.
Chair,
Yeah, Councilmember.
you say those 11 positions are important, but I think those 11 positions. I mean, when you think about it, they're the guys that would go out and relieve the pressure from the supervisors, because they're out there doing these steps and taking care of these pieces and lightening us the load on their backs. Because like Chris said, at 2 in the morning, he's gonna go out and turn off the valve. You can pay a guy 130 grand. You don't fill those 11 positions, your $130,000 guy gonna go outside and turn off the valve at 2 in the morning, because nobody's gonna be there to do it. We have to work better at filling these positions, and I think it's better outreach. I really do think we have to look at how we get the message out and where we get to, because it's gotta be a way. These young kids coming out of school, you're right. A lot of families cannot financially afford to take a position like this, but a young fellow coming out of high school or college that would have the enthusiasm to do this type of work, love that position. I think that we just need to get, you know, more eyes and ears on that application. But those 11 positions are critical. That $130,000 a year guy, you know, do the things that you want him to do, because without the workers, he's got to go out and do it, no matter how much you pay him, you don't pay him. Or that person, I apologize, whoever it is, would have to go out and do that work. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. Need to find a way to fill those spots.
I definitely agree on that as well, Councilmember Gully. I mean, this right here, you know, as much as I do acknowledge the importance of this position, I absolutely do. But with these 11 vacant positions, you know, I just see this number increasing. The employee morale is just going to drop significantly. When they're only getting what, a 3% increase or 4% of whatever was negotiated, and then this, you know, whoever is gonna hold this position getting a $30,000 increase. That's just, I mean, that's. I'm sick to my stomach just by looking at this, and I do understand, you know, the importance, but these positions are absolutely most critical. And the taxpayers will benefit from these positions being filled. They, you know, I mean, as much as I'm sure they'll acknowledge management position, but it's boots on the ground that will benefit strongly on the taxpayers. So I just have to leave it at that. But if anybody else wants to have a question or anything,
Chair.
Councilmember Conley Wilson.
Andy, Trotsky, all the, salary increases, those are all contractual, right? For the, I'm looking at purification right now. I don't know if we might have, because that's where all the supervisors are. I'm just noticing, where is it? A couple of laborers from 38 to 46. Yeah. I'm at 223.
With the excluding the assistant operation manager and the supervisor of water plant operations, because that relates back to the proposal, any salary increases on this page are step increases for next year. Are contractual increases for next year. Some may have steps, but they're all, everything's contractual.
Yeah. I see training. I do think there's a benefit of filling these, just based on the list that Andrew goes and just listed out for us in terms of what some folks are carrying and some of the kind of longer term things. I do think these roles are needed, not to say that the laborer and the boots in the ground roles aren't important, but we do need someone looking at the future, looking at, all right, what is the condition of our water plant? How can we improve upon that? And especially if a lot of these projects are being executed by contractors, it seems like the vacancy wouldn't impact those specific projects, maybe overall in the maintenance, maybe not the maintenance, overall in some of the other projects that are going on. I do think it's important that we fill all these roles, but it does seem like, in my opinion, this is something that we need, and we need to think hand in hand about what are our salaries looking like across the board. And I know that's more of a union negotiation, but I do think right now seems to be the time to kind of start thinking about it, even if the contracts are up right now. Just looking at some of my own research I've done, I'm just like, yeah, we really need to be paying our employees a lot more, especially as the cost of rents increase, the cost of living increase, inflation, all that. So, you know, I do think it's important to balance both of those. But I see the need in that. And then we just have one project supervisor. Is that like across all DPU, or is that?
There's one project supervisor in this department, second project supervisor in F8389. So the project supervisor in F8389 is specific to lead replacement. F8330's project supervisor focuses, he's working right now on it's Steve Badger, he's doing lead replacement stuff right now. He's doing water transmission phase 1 stuff right now, phase 2. And I'm sure he's doing more than a plethora of other things.
Is the And those are both filled, it looks like.
Correct.
And there's no grant writers across. There's our grant manager or anything like that.
DPU historically has written their own grants.
Other Andy, do you think it would be helpful to have a grant coordinator or manager kind of helping with that, or you feel like the,
That would be extremely helpful, or someone in one of those other positions that they had, that we had put up, to help with like the higher level of all the grant related things. You know, that would, I agree that the 11 open positions, you know, those are extremely important. I'd love to fill those and get more, but I also need help on like the paperwork side of things, like Andy had mentioned earlier, we had an hour-long meeting this morning with DOH. The amount of paperwork and time and energy that strictly goes into that alone limits me from doing a million other things in the water. So like, it's mostly like a reactionary basis for work right now. I need to be able to look into the future and work on things that are coming up.
Right, moving along, anybody have any questions on purification?
Chair, I just want to agree with Councilmember Conley Wilson. I think we need to be cautious and not view this as an either or situation. It's not, to use someone else's phrase, boots on the ground versus the need for the proposed positions. I think it's a package that we need to look at it in totality. And I would really encourage us to keep our thinking that way, not either or, but both, so to
No,
speak.
I understand completely, it's just when, you know, we have that duty to vote on something, on a budget, and we're looking at all of the, I'm looking at the whole package deal here. We're looking at all of these vacancies, and they haven't been filled. And yeah, we're looking into about, I'm thinking here, just calculating off the top of my head, about $300,000 worth of management position. I mean, I just see, like, overall picture is that we're gonna see more vacancies, and I think that our main focus right now should be really filling these positions and doing a whole big analysis of, okay, now that we have these positions filled, where do we go from here? You know, what type of help and assistance do these management positions really need? That's the overall picture. We can agree to disagree, but you know, I think that, you know, just shoving management positions out there with $300,000 worth of raises. Meanwhile, we can't fill positions. I find it, there's a missing piece to this. And I would like to find some kind of connection to that.
Chair, I would just suggest that we listen to the folks who are doing the work. And Andrew has clearly made the argument that he needs these positions as well as needing the laborers. And so I think that's what these hearings are about, is to listen to the departments and to listen to their arguments for why we have these proposals in front of us. And so I want to thank Andrew for making that case.
Well, yeah, I don't care what order that comes in, we need both. It's important.
Chair,
Councilmember Gully.
you know, along this way, we see these positions and it kind of, we realize this is what it takes out in the world to get somebody at a high level. But the restraint is even to get the person at a high level, he has to work at a low level because he has nobody to work for him. So the thought is maybe we can create something where we can have salaries, maybe not this high, but we take some of that money, we utilize it towards, again, towards an employee pool, towards, part-time worker, whatever, but there's gotta be a way to fix both, but I think that a lot of pressure comes from not having to stay. And then you're running around trying to work, think, write, talk, and it puts a lot of pressure on managers. You can't relieve the stress by paying them more money. You can relieve the stress by giving them less obligation, giving employees under them. And having people who work for them, so they have somebody to supervise. Right now, they supervise them, nobody to supervise. And that is a distraction to the whole process. But I think we can find a middle ground, let's find a middle ground, let's work at this. Andy, we know you need the workers, and we know we need a supportive management, structure in place, we know we do. But we have a budget to look at, and the way it comes in, we have to try to do the best we can. I would like to try to see what we can do to handle that situation, but I don't know if it'll come in the next few weeks.
That's totally-
But certainly, we understand where we're at, and we understand both sides of it. At least I do, I know I.
And Chair, if I could, I will just say it in 10 seconds. A top-down structure is not gonna work. We have to go bottom up.
Anyone have any questions? All right, so we'll, go on to, transmission. Well, hold on, your teaching, I'm sorry, I highlighted something. Oh, Andy, the current budget on the gas and electric is, I believe we had to put more money in, maybe mid-year or recently, we have 120, but yet we're budgeting for 100,
It was,
and the prior year was 2018.
it was based off of the current year expenditures to date when I.
So what do we have, now? Yeah, thank you.
$48,000, $49,000.
Okay, okay. And then consultant services, Andy, we're, cutting them by almost 20K. Yeah.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Or-
833409,
Yeah,
if I can get back to it.
okay, thank you. Here.
That may be $30,000. I have to check, but that may be in the event first, the 21,000 was spent in the first 6 months. But I believe that was also a consideration of when we did the budget, the RFP was still out of it. The city hired a third party to carry the 1A lists. Which may be why that's there, why I upped it to 30.
Okay. And Chair? Yeah. Andy, I noticed the salary savings is 13.9, but a few of these positions have been open for a while. Should the salary savings be higher?
So the salary savings reflected here is exclusively step increases
Okay,
for the various people in the departments.
you're not including the vacant.
The vacant position, so if it had been encumbered by a person who was a step 25, and it's now vacant, we would budget it to be a step 1 in the document, so. We would have already acknowledged that salary savings. Any other questions on 8330? 8340, similar to 8330, where the exception of the supervisor of water position, which would replace the which would replace the maintenance manager position. Any other salary changes are contractually based salary savings and step increases. Again, keeping the accounts consistent with that of the prior year.
Councilmember Gully?
If this budget goes through, will we then look to hire a maintenance manager? If this budget through with the new positions, if it does.
Now, the maintenance, if this budget were to be approved as proposed, the maintenance manager position would be eliminated and replaced by the supervisor of water position.
I just knew that there was a salary mark in there. And I know I seen 0 for 2024, but the other spot didn't have any less salaries. I wasn't sure.
Karen? Thank you. So Andy, then basically we're talking about an actual impact of $10,000.
Yes, in this department. And the same in 8330, because we would have budgeted the assistant operations manager, even though it's $0 in the budget currently, because it's vacant. There was a budgeted salary for that position in 2023. So that would hold true as well for 80.
What would the net be on that?
So
Okay.
Come on, Andy.
Ever see Criminal Minds? And he has the, all the math. Andy,
yes,
was it 69,098?
I'm pulling it right now.
I'm just,
Yes, so that would be rounded $30,000. Any other questions on 8340? Page 231. As I mentioned before, this is the department that's exclusively for lead service replacements. Because all of the funding, the exception of salaries and benefits, falls under the capital project. That's why this department is exclusively code 1 and code 8. Are there any other questions on the water fund? Sewer fund, page 238.
Chair. Do you want to go to revenues first for the solar?
That's page
Oh, I
238.
thought it was in the front.
We changed that a few years ago where we just, so that we're not flipping all over.
should we go to the bond? Anything?
No, so that's it, that's all of that. Just about is CSO project. There's, I think, one bond years and years ago. EFC, everything else.
Okay.
Short term is all EFC, or CSO. Long term is at this point pretty much all CSO. Sewer, there was no proposed change to the city sewer rate. So revenues were budgeted consistent with using a percentage based of, as the water rate is or the sewer rate is a percentage of the water rate, 3.8 million derives as a percentage of the total revenues in water. And we can skip the bus if there's questions on revenue, page 243. Similar to the last two departments in water, salaries in G 8120 are all contractual with the exception of the proposed change in structure where the water supervisor of sewer would be, well, the supervisor of sewer would be added to the department. Which would add $100,000 to the sewer fund budget. Looking at expenditures, we kept them consistent with that of the prior year. Sure, there's any questions?
So there was no swap.
No swap. The impact there is it's less of a transfer to the CSO project. That project is pretty well funded. That is not the, this is kind of separate from the conversation about the structure proposal. That project's very well funded. What we're doing is we're paying down that debt when it comes to long-term conversion. That's basically long-term debt on DFC sewer debt is 0%, short-term debt is 0.07%. Insulated from the market entirely. So. No.
No next.
243, the line by line expenditures for sewer, generally consistent with that of the prior year. We have had to make some transfers throughout the year in sewer. If I recall correctly, a lot of that was for more of the one-time expenditure base. So the melding of what we've seen historically and
Yep, I see that, Andy. There is one major bump and then the other equipment. Are we looking for something and?
I can see if I have notes on it.
Okay. Thank you. Chair.
And then for the 409, the consultant services. That one's up a lot. Goes up to 165.
We'll check that.
I think it
Maybe Chair. Maybe Andy could tell us where we are to date on 409. That money's out. Thank you.
$130,500. 409. $130,000. That account is used for a litany of different things, such as third-party engineering for non-CSR related costs, and then paving work for patches. When they do sewer line work.
Chair, Yeah, Andy, where would it be? We appropriated money for an upgrade for the chemical. That would be in capital, but where we also, was the part of that also for different chemicals to be used? Materials, or was it just the facility?
It was just the facility upgrades. We are discussing a fund balance appropriation relating to chemicals at an upcoming meeting for a temporary portion of that work. That will be about $300,000, but we'll take it out of this year's fund balance and appropriate to the capital projects fund for that work, and I'll carry over to the next year.
Yeah, I had thought, Chris had mentioned that before he left.
What we had done was the $18.5 million bond resolution, which is for permitting chemical related processes, and then also significant improvements to the water plant itself. That grant application was submitted to DEC. If we're awarded, would be financed through EFC for the grant portion attached.
So you'll be coming to us, November, after budget or before to you?
Probably, Chris, I'll write them and submit them. Maybe November 2nd, if not, we'll do it as November finance.
Thank you.
So those two pieces are forthcoming. The 500,000 for lead, the 300,000 chemical processing, chemicals themselves.
So we'll talk more at that meeting about 300,000, but this is really important because although it's a temporary fix, the process will reduce the corrosivity of the water so that less lead is able to be absorbed into the water. So even those homes with lead service lines will see a reduction of lead infiltration into the water. And that will impact both the service lines, but also lead fixtures in homes, lead plumbing within homes. That's an important change in our protocols. More on that to come.
Sharon, do you guys just mind like sharing with me, like, not right now, but like what chemicals you're using and things like that, like the processes? I'm just personally interested. Not sure if I'll understand all of it, but I will do my best.
We can do that, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I read your microphone.
The fund transfers.
That's the trade, so
That's-
that's the transfer to the CSO project.
Okay.
So what we do is we budget all the expenditures, budget revenues, and then the difference. I hate to use this word, but it's a plug about it. That's how we've done it. It sets aside money for the CSO project, so that's consistent with what we've done since I started with the city.
Sharon, yep. So that's, I guess I'm just trying to, for the debt service fund, how it jumped up. Like 20K or 200,000 over 2.
That's so as I mentioned before with water, that's the estimate for the EFC debt related, the short-term EFC debt related to the CSO fund. There were significant increases this year in EFC short-term debt for that project. As everyone's aware, we're part of a consortium to do that work. The city of Albany has begun their work on their biggest part of the project. So we paid our pro rata share of that, which has caused an increase in the short-term debt.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Unless there's any other questions.
How about our chair? How about our other mandate? Any, it's your first budget meeting, what do you think?
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to doing it next year.
I like the way you.
Like that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair, before you dismiss me, I just want to put on post a giant team, the Buffalo Bills back.
But that.
We had something upload where they almost with their clock management.
Chair, do we want to allow?
I'm gonna open this up now to public forum. If anybody, get in line, people, no fighting, but, if anybody would like to come and speak. About anything, regarding the public utility. Great. We'll, close the public forum. Motion to adjourn. I'll second. Yeah. Perfect. Aye, all in favor. All in favor. Aye. Opposed.